Some games are so unrealistic that they have you do things like jumping off buildings. Well, it's not like they'd try to do that in live action. Oh! And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell, a series where I spend way too much time thinking about what makes a story. And today's episode is Assassin's Creed. And with the new movie coming out, I think now is a great time to talk about exactly what's gone on in the story so far. I'm going to start with Desmond's story. But first, what is Assassin's Creed? Assassin's Creed is a video game that's one part conspiracy theory, one part ancient aliens, and one part doomsday preppers. The whole concept behind it is that you're playing the character that's finding out about these groups that are behind the scenes. Desmond is our modern day character. Do you remember when we spoke about point of view? And about plot? Because of the point of view of this story being through Desmond, the plot is told both in and out of sequence. I know what you're saying, how can it be both? From Desmond's point of view, everything is happening in order to him. However, he's sending his consciousness into the past. Well, not really. We'll get to that when we get to the Animus. And because of that, we are seeing things out of order. We're starting in modern day, we're going back to ancient Middle East, then we're coming back to modern day, then we're going to ancient Italy, and so on and so forth. Wrapped up around this entire conspiracy is the fact that in the year 2012, the world was supposed to end. Remember the Mayan calendar fear? Well, they worked on that right from 2007. Back when I reviewed Voltron, I decided that I was going to use coins of different values to represent my ratings. Why? I don't really know. But I think that the Assassin's Creed story definitely deserves platinum, one of the most expensive coins ever made. To be fair to other stories, we can't judge a video game on being a tight story, because it has to give you free reign to move around. You are partially the protagonist of this story. But either way, the writing, the concept, and especially the story itself, all deserve high praise. So Desmond Miles starts off as a kid who grew up on some place he calls the farm. It's basically a social commune. He considers it a hippie situation. And he was off the grid, and his parents always told him the enemy was coming. And of course, this enemy never showed up. So at 16 years old, he ran away from home and tried his best to just blend in with normal society. He got a job as a bartender working for cash, and pretty much stayed under the radar, until the day Abstergo Industries kidnapped him. Desmond awakens to find himself in a machine called the Animus, and within the Animus, it's explained to him that the same way that animals have instinctual memory, the ability to do things without being taught, humans have that ability too. We just don't use it. Hidden within our DNA is the coding for our ancestors' memory. And they need his memories, his ancestors' memories, to find something. There's a lot of order and chaos back and forth here. The head researcher even tells Desmond, hey, look at the world around you. Look at how craptastic it is. We want to make the world a better place. He compares all of the social ills we face to cancer. And Desmond jokes, great chemotherapy for the masses. The doctor agrees, which is a pretty scary thought, because chemotherapy kills cancer. So if you consider the worst parts of our society cancer, you're talking about something crazy like possible genocide. In the first game, all we know is that Desmond has the bloodline of one of the greatest assassins in history, Altair. Altair at some point came across something called the Pieces of Eden, and that is what the Templars, through Abstergo Industry, are looking for. So for a moment, let's sidetrack into ancient aliens, okay? There was a precursor race. I'm not even sure if they were aliens or if they were just something that lived on Earth before. The game isn't 100% clear on that. They had this technological society that they had built up, and they were using humans as a slavery. They used the Pieces of Eden, specifically Apples of Eden, to control humanity. But they had many things that were powerful, ancient artifacts that people would look for over the years. Until Adam and Eve started a rebellion. Yup, that Adam and Eve, that's why we call it Eden. That rebellion led to the downfall of the precursors and the rise of humanity. And from there, we start with the Society of the Templars and the Assassins, both knowing about these pieces of Eden, looking for them for their own goals, with the Templars representing order and the Assassins representing chaos, specifically freedom versus organization. So Altair is just the beginning. Desmond is part of a crucial conjunction of bloodlines. Between his mother and his father, both of which were assassin trained, he has multiple assassins in his background. And through the Animus, we can learn about all of them. Specifically, we go through, with him personally, Altair, Ezio, and the Kenway family, Edward, Hatham, and Connor. Now, even though he himself never actually goes through Edward, we the player do, and there is another character that's very important in the timeline of the Kenways, so I'm going to be talking about someone that may not even be his ancestor. Shay Patrick McCormick, the rogue assassin. So Desmond really is all of these characters at the same time, but we'll get into that as we now take a look into the Animus. The story of Altair is the story of the beginning of the war between the Templars and the Assassins. It's also where we get our first piece of Eden, an apple of Eden. It can control people's minds, and it also can show the location of other hidden stashes of forbearer technology. For most of that game, Desmond is trapped inside Abstergo, just finding out little bits and pieces as his ancestor is. The end of Game 1, the assassins break him out, and with that, they steal a piece of their own Animus, so that they can continue to use Desmond the same way the Templars are. And with that, we're introduced to Ezio Auditore. Ezio, he goes into to train, though, because there's something called the bleed effect. Things he learns in the Animus, he can learn in real life. And it's important to note at this point that inside the Animus, things like eagle vision and things like free running can easily be explained as the computer allowing you to do things that aren't physically possible. But you have to remember, it's all based on memory. So Ezio and Altair were running up walls, were blending in with crowds. All of that were supernatural abilities in the bloodline. And through the bleed effect, Desmond can learn how to do them too. Since there's no such thing as a completely original story, I want you to think about this and compare it to another story, one that became a series of best-selling novels and then movies. Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code. Dan Brown's novels are about some secret history that can only be revealed through secret organizations that are hunting down some special individuals with a magic bloodline. Yeah, easy to draw comparisons there. Now, in Dan Brown's series, we follow someone who's specifically an expert in symbolism, and I think that several of the characters in Assassin's Creed easily fall into that as well. The most important part, at least in my mind, when comparing the two, is the fact that the story itself, the hidden history, the secret bloodline, the Templars that are trying to plot, has a lot of oomph there. Just something for you to keep in mind as we move forward with this story. The story of Ezio Auditore is the story of revenge. As a young Italian merchant prince, his family is killed and he has to go after the people who did, and he finds out that he is an assassin and has the bloodline of an assassin. The important point here is that he does not have the bloodline of Altair, so at some point his bloodline later crosses with that bloodline. Now, with him, we do have one of the funniest scenes in Assassin's Creed. It's me, a Mario! You'd have to see it to know it. But, in the meantime, through Ezio, his life is almost entirely important, from childhood all the way up till the end. And in the end, he goes into the area where Altair was, and searching for Altair's treasure. And through that, comes across a piece of Eden. And that piece of Eden talks to him, because one of the forbearer races comes out and says, "Hey, you're the emissary, you're the ambassador, you're the guy I've been waiting for. I need to tell you, the whole world's in danger. There's going to be a solar flare in the year 2012. And Ezio's like, "Huh? What? What are you talking about?" And she just keeps shushing him. "This isn't for you. This is for Desmond. You're just the person I'm using to get the information to him." So back in modern day, we now have this little conundrum. How could the ancients have known about Desmond? Is he being manipulated? Who knows? But before he can find out too much, he has to save the world. And to do so, he needs to go back into the Animus and find two more ancestors, members of the Kenway family, specifically Connor and Hatham. Hatham was an assassin turned into a Templar, and Connor, his son. The two of them know where there is a piece of Eden, specifically a shield that can block and stop this solar flare. During all this, we find out that the modern assassins work for Desmond's father, and we get a heartfelt reunion. Now, Abstergo wants to use these devices for their own purposes, being that they're Templars and want to control humanity, and to do so, they kidnap Desmond's father. And now this is where everything goes kooky, because in Assassin's Creed 3, for the first time, you play Desmond on a mission. Desmond free-running, Desmond jumping off buildings, Desmond using the hidden blade, Desmond using the eagle vision, all of it, because he's learned as Ezio learned, and now, in modern day, has all of these magical powers, ones that the forebearers knew he would have. He gets into Abstergo, uses the Apple of Eden to take control of everyone, and make them kill themselves, really. And then it's off to save the world. Well, there's still time for a twist. Before we get to that twist, though, we're going to go back and do the Kenway family for a second, because it's an important part of the mythology of what's going on, and it's important to who Desmond is. The story of the Kenway family is told out of order. First we meet Hatham, then we meet his son Connor, then we meet their predecessor Edward, but I'm going to just do this in order. Edward was a pirate, had nothing to do with the Assassins or the Templars. He was pretty much just out for himself. When he did come across the Assassins, he pretended to be one, not too well, but his story literally follows as he learns the meaning of the creed. When he first hears it, nothing is real, everything is permitted. He literally takes it to mean, I can do what I want. But by the end of the story, he realizes exactly what it means. It means that nothing is real. There are no real rules. Everything is permitted, and that's why you need the chaos. You need the freedom. That's what the Assassins really are, freedom fighters. Maybe taking it a bit far, but the Templars are bad enough that they look like the heroes in the story. Hatham, his son, actually becomes a turncoat. He joins the Templars. Through him, we get the Rogue story, which is where yet another assassin turns to the Templars, and we get the twist of the code. If anything is permitted, no one is safe. And it's really where you have to realize that these are a balancing point. Between Edward, Hatham, and Connor, they come across several pieces of Eden that are important in unlocking things in the future, specifically that shield against the solar flare. And as such, Desmond travels through Hatham first, at first not even realizing he's a Templar, and then into his son Connor. And then through Connor, through the Revolutionary War, rebuilds the Assassin Order. Why does he have to rebuild it? Well, because Hatham and Shay Cormac tore it apart, that the Kenway family is a family that has ties to both Chaos and Order, both Templar and Assassin. And of course, that bloodline runs through Desmond Miles. So you've played through 5 games and end up at the end of Assassin's Creed 3, the end of Desmond's story. And you get to the force field generator that can save the world. And that's when it's told to you, everything has been manipulated. Not by the Templars, but by the precursor race. And now this is where we really need to go into some crazy. Juno is one of the precursors, and she somehow has manipulated people across the eons because she was locked away and killed back before humanity, before even Adam and Eve rebelled. Now, her only way back into this world is through the pieces of Eden that Desmond has collected. If he activates that force field, he saves the world and puts her back in it with full power. On the other hand, if he chooses not to, the other precursors in the room tell him he just needs to stand there, let the solar flare hit Earth. It will decimate the human race, but it won't extinct it. Not entirely. A much more manageable, Dark Ages level humanity can rise up with the assassins as their leaders. And now Desmond Miles, this poor kid who was kidnapped, forced into a coma, made to relive multiple people's lives, has to choose chaos or order, evil or good, and his end decision forced on him. Does he let himself die and free this evil into the world, or does he choose to live and try to rule a world that's been almost destroyed, but not quite? And of course, being our hero, his choice is obvious. He will self-sacrifice. He will let himself die, and the last thing he says is, "Hey, Juno, you're right, I'm letting you go. But the assassins are going to stop you. We stopped the Templars, we're going to stop you." And then he sacrifices himself and lets the world live. The story of Assassin's Creed is far from over. 4 picks up with the fact that they can use Desmond's DNA to access the Animus for extra people, and now anyone can access anyone else's ancestral memory. Except you need to be good, you need to have something, some ability to do it. It's kind of ephemeral, and the modern-day story has been cut down massively to make room for more assassination stuff. However, the story is still there. It's still the story about the assassins who want freedom and the Templars that want order. And now it's very important that we make that distinction. Yes, it's chaos versus order, but the assassins see themselves as fighting for freedom and free will, and the Templars see themselves fighting for order. Now, we have some cartoony villains because, well, video games, but at the end of the day, you could see that these factions have people on both sides that actually believe in what they're doing, that what they're doing is right. As we explore the heart of the story we tell, this gives us 2 things to think about. One is way back when I said that video games were just as much of a storytelling medium as anything else, as a novel, as a movie, as a cartoon. And I think Assassin's Creed really proves that. As a game, it tells quite a story. The second point, the little nugget. Each individual assassin he travels back to has their own story nugget. Ezio is about the difference between justice and vengeance, and about being a hothead. Connor has the same story arc told in reverse. His is looking for justice becoming about revenge, and having to learn who to trust and who not to trust. Each and every one of them has to learn in their own way what the creed means to them, and the creed is a pretty powerful concept, even if it's a fictional one. Now, the whole story is based on a French novel, the Amulet, something like that. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. I'll throw a quick cover shot up here for you so that you can make fun of my pronunciations. So what am I looking for in the movie? Well, I'm hoping for a character other than Desmond who has a similar arc as Desmond. Someone who Abstergo has kidnapped, Abstergo has put into the Animus, and Abstergo is hoping to get information about the Pieces of Eden from. What I'd really like is some Easter eggs towards Desmond, but at the same time I want this to be a completely different story in the same world. I want you to be able to sit there and say, hey, if I play the video games, I'm not playing this character, but I'm playing a character like this character. I hope they keep the themes the same, chaos and order, and I hope that they do a better job than some of the games did at making the Templars out to be well-intentioned extremists instead of outright cartoon villains. But we're going to have to wait for December to see that. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you for taking this walk through the heart of the stories we tell. Have a good night.